everyone. Today, I'm going to go over why Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage much matters to you. My name is Professor Jenny Bond, and today I'm going to go with my talk will be on 10 reasons why Asian American studies matters. Now, before we start the talk, if I can share a personal story with you about myself, I'm actually from Belleville, Illinois. And before that, I'm kind of vagabond. I was from Ferguson, Missouri. And before that, I was from Long Island, New York. And so basically my life in Belleville, Illinois encompassed Catholic school. So, if you look at here, I still wear these Mary Jane shoes. I have this inordinate love of plaid. That is me. And and so I want to share my personal story. And if you're here and if you watch that great Pixar Disney film, Turning Red, take a look at Mei Ling. I was Mei Ling. Okay. I was, raised in Belleville, Illinois, and I was like her. I had immigrant parents where getting a B was an Asian F, and it was, a tough way. And I actually was raised in a Chinese restaurant, but I'm hesitant to say the Chinese restaurant. It was as small as a table counter. In fact, it was actually a converted kind of gas station. So it was like tiny 200 feet place. And we actually worked there, but also lived in back. And so every morning I would wake up in the morning and we lived in the place we worked in. And I would say, good morning, Mom. Good morning, Dad. And I'd leave them. And I know it's crazy, but as 8 years old, I would walk really far, like a mile or so, to my Catholic school. And basically, it was kind of a harrowing trip, kind of like Mei Ling. I would have to cross streets. I had to go over bridges. I had to go. It was actually quite far. When I think back, wow, it was, very far. And I had to go through a lot of people's yards, etc. And that's what I did every day. And I finally would get all the way to the Catholic school. And then I'd go to church. And then, I'd say hello to the Father. And then the sermon would be done. And then I'd be done with church. And then I'd get on the bus. And then I would say, hello, bus driver Henry. And then I would say hello. And then the bus driver would take all of us really, really far, or it seemed as an 8-year-old, to the second Catholic school. And that's where I went to Catholic school. So I'd say goodbye, Henry. And then I'd get in, and actually the priests and the nuns would wait outside for us. And I would say, hello, Sister Mary. Hello, Father John. And I would say, greet them. And I'd go to school and I tried hard. Parents are 8th grade educated. So I really want to try hard and do well. And that was my day every single day. And then it was done. And I walked back and came back for school, and then I would say goodbye, Father John, and bye, Sister Mary, and I would get on the bus, and the bus would take us all really far away back, and then I'd let us go, and I'd say goodbye, bus driver Henry, and then I would actually get off, and then I'd do that trek again, crossing the double streets over on top of the bridge. Sometimes it was raining, sometimes it was dark, very scary. So finally, one of those days I came home, and I was like, oh, I came home. And home was also the Chinese restaurant. And, it was a very interesting place because our customers were predominantly African-American. And I always had a very warm feeling because they're so nice to me. And then Catholic school was all Anglo and, white. And I knew I wasn't white. And then there were no Asians in Belleville, Illinois at the time. And so I only had 2 choices. And so I came home, I saw my mom, my dad was cooking in back, the wok really hot. I could smell the food. And I say to my mom, I'm Black. And she's like, what? And she literally gets really mad, looks down at me at 8-year-old, and she grabs my shoulder and she shakes me and she says, you are not Black. You are Chinese, you're Asian. And of course, my 8-year-old mind, I had no idea what she was talking about. And I was like, but I was very obedient. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm Asian, I guess. And so I share this personal story with you. And because this is actually the awakening of my Asian American identity and my interest in Asian American studies. And there's always a beginning. And I would say that was one of my beginnings. And so I want you to start thinking back, why would my mom shake me? And why would she get so incensed, angry? So I want you to think in your mind, why would she do that? All right. So now I want to go into my talk today called 10 Reasons Why Asian American Studies Month Matters to You. So, there's actually been a lot of anti-Asian hate of late, but actually it's been all throughout history. Actually global, there's anti-Asian globalness. But, particularly in America, it's been pretty bad with like over 100 hate crimes and then hundreds of hate instances. But, a lot of times there were actually verbal attacks. And sometimes the verbal attacks were, oh, you're not of this country, go back to whatever. Okay. Well, I want to say the number one reason why Asian American Studies matters is to look and learn about history and how history helps you. Well, in 1765 was one of the first Asian settlements. It was Filipino sailors. They're known as Manila men. And I want to say they're sailors, but they were kind of slaves and they jumped overboard the Spanish ships and they landed in Louisiana. Now, anyway, they actually did a huge contribution to Louisiana cuisine and culture. First of all, they intermarried with the Cajuns and the African Americans and the local people. Second of all, they brought a lot of their knowledge from the Philippines. They reproduced. So number one, if you've been to the Philippines, you'll know that a lot of the houses are on stilts because it's like waterways. What? Well, guess what they built in Louisiana? Houses on stilts. And also, they were called dancing shrimp. They actually had lots of techniques of catching the shrimp and drying the shrimp. Well, guess what? That's what they did in Louisiana. And, raise your hand if you heard that they actually fought in the 1812 war as well. They did. They fought for the United States. And raise your hand if you've ever had jambalaya. Well, if you've gone to the Philippines, you know that shrimp dishes and rice dishes and protein is very common, especially that soupiness. So again, massive impact. And a lot of times I want to say that so many Asian Americans have been underrepresented, but their history and their contribution, particularly Asian men, have not been acknowledged. Number two, why Asian American Studies matters. I want you guys to zoom in, like get as close as you can, even pause it. Look at this picture. This is literally the most famous picture. If you're a history major, you know this picture really well. It's the most famous like railroad picture that we have in the United States. And why it's so famous is because it's 1869. The Continental Railroad was completed. The East and the West were combined, right? And actually, that was a huge thing, right? Because particularly if you look at Gordon Chang's book from Stanford, he's a professor, and he wrote a great book on the contribution of the railroad to the United States. Number one, hello, modernity. Hello, massive development after the railroad was employed. And actually, I want you to stare and I want you to look at every single face. Look at every single face in this picture. I want you to maybe pause it. Look at every single face. Now, after you pause it, I'm gonna tell you something crazy. What if I told you that 90% of all the Continental Railroad workers were Chinese males? Clan system. Now, you guys, I asked you to like zoom in. Do you see even one Chinese person there in the picture? So again, history is interesting because their contributions are erased. Even though I'm telling you, 90% of the labor force of the Continental Railroad were Chinese males. And throughout history, particularly Chinese males, their contribution has not been acknowledged, particularly in development of America. Think about all the things the railroad did. I mean, the far-reaching things, right? Positive and negative that the railroad did, right? And again, take a look. Now, interesting enough, also, when the Japanese first arrived, it was 1843. Now, when the Continental Railroad combined, what month was that? When the Japanese first arrived, what month was that? And if you guys said, you want to pause it and say May, you're correct. And that's why in the United States, especially, we have the Asian Pacific American month in May. Now, raise your hand if you're an American citizen, okay? Raise your hand if you have children who are American citizens that are born here, okay? Well, and the third reason why Asian American Studies matters is take a look at this gentleman. This is Kim Wong-Ark. A lot of people put down essential workers like restaurant workers, but we know now during this like crazy times, a pandemic and such, that they actually are holding up the entire country. Well, this gentleman, Kim Wong-ark, was a restaurant worker. He was a restaurant worker in San Francisco, born in San Francisco, raised in San Francisco, born in 1873. Well, he's born in San Francisco and he wanted to visit China for the first time. So he went to China and he's like, okay, look around. Came back to the United States. They stopped him. He was shocked. They said, hey, you're not American. You can't come by in this country. He's like, what are you talking about? I was born here, right? Now, if you look globally, not every country has birthright citizenship. And so he said, I'm American, I'm American. So he fought it. He took it to the Supreme Court, okay? Wong Kim Ark versus the United States. And guess what? In 1898, birthright citizenship was actually enacted for everyone. Now, I want you to think to yourself, did that have an impact on you? Did that have impact in the United States? Did that have impact on the world? You know it did, right? But do people remember it was Kim Wong-ark or Wong Kim Ark? Sometimes you put your last name first, okay? So again, this is a huge importance. The third most important reason why Asian American Studies matters. Now, the fourth reason why Asian American Studies matters. Now, unfortunately, there's been lots of anti-Asian hate, but especially anti-South Asian American hates, right? DC American. Did you know the story of the GHADAR party? Now, South Asians, where I'm at in Fresno right now, there's a lot of Punjabis. And actually, in Washington, in the early 1900s, they were lumberyard workers, right? Also farm agricultural workers. And what happened was, again, the constant refrain, that immigrants are taking your job. And so, and although these jobs, a lot of people don't want to do, okay? And so they were, hardworking Punjabi workers. You're not going to believe it. Anglo workers got together, burned down their bunkers that they're working in, actually beat them up, tried to, very much hurt them. In fact, some actually had to run to the police station and the police had to actually lock them in so they wouldn't be murdered. And even if you can believe this, pushed into other states, even pushed into Canada, okay? They were pushed into another country, right? That's how much the South Asian or anti-Asian hate was, right? Now, how did they respond? Did they retaliate? Did they fight back? Well, we could say they resisted in a positive manner. Actually, they started something called the GHADAR Party in 1903 to 1913. This party was dedicated, it was a religious party, and it was dedicated to freeing the world of imperialism and colonization. Now, during this time, of course, we know that India was actually imperialized, it was colonized by Great Britain. And so they wanted to free India, okay? And so again, they didn't just want to free India. They wanted to free the world of imperialism. So they wrote poems, they wrote pamphlets, they wrote flyers, and they actually sent it all over the world. So you can find these flyers, these poems, these treaties of peace in Scotland, in Ireland, Nigeria, Hong Kong, all over the world. Just amazing. Okay. Now take a look at these gentlemen. Some people say that it was a failed attempt because of the fact, yes, they gathered up also some bombs and also some actual guns, and they're gonna forcibly de-imperialize, decolonize India. They got caught and they were actually executed, but one could argue that actually their poems, their flyers, their writings are still globally all over the world and has inspired multiple decolonization movements, right? Some people say, and this is amazing. And again, this is a really wonderful Central Valley kind of story as well, if you're interested in Central Valley, California stories. Now, interesting enough, in the United States, a huge tragedy that happened was Executive Order 9066. And that's when the Japanese were accused of being spies and they were interned. Okay, that happened. And, they're particularly where I'm at right now, I'm in Fresno, and literally they were actually put into the horse stalls where they had to be. They got like a letter in the mail. Actually, the census got their email, their addresses, and they said, you got to get into the horse stalls and like stay there until we put you out into internment camp. And actually, this happened all over California. This also happened in like Santa Anita, the Assembly Center. Really a tragic history. So raise your hand if you and your family were interned, if you got that letter, you had to go to the internment assembly center and then be interned, would you join the United States Army to protect the United States that it's interning your family? I want you to think about that. Would you do it? Now, when I ask all my students, pretty much all of them say, no, I'm not going to do that. I always get like one or two that say, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fight for our country, even though it's interning me. That's what happened. Take a look at this picture. This is the 42nd Japanese American Infantry. Go for broke. This infantry actually is the most decorated for its size army regiment that we've ever had in the United States military history. And the stories are amazing. If you actually, sometimes I show documentaries, how they threw themselves on top of grenades, how they, really selflessly and heroically fought against the Nazis. And if you squint your eyes and you look clearly and very closely at a lot of these World War II videos, right? These in documentary videos, you see the freeing and the internment camps, freeing of these like Nazi occupied areas. Look closely and you look at the pictures. You're going to see Asian Americans, Japanese American men who were part of the 42nd. Take a look at Daniel Inouye. Daniel Inouye, senator, has done so many positive things for the United States. He was, people don't know, a 42nd Army veteran. He fought for our country. And again, life-changing, life-changing. Number 6, the 6th most important reason why Asian American Studies matters. Well, take a look. I always ask my students, hey, you've heard of the United Farm Workers? Everyone hands raised up. I said, well, what's his name again? And they go, Cesar, what? Cesar Chavez, yes. And everyone in the United States, I think, is well versed with Cesar Chavez, his movement very justly of giving farm workers rights. But do you guys know the full story? Do you know the full story of Cesar Chavez and United Farm Workers? Actually, take a look at this gentleman, Larry Itliong. He was born 1913 to 1977. He was a Filipino farm worker in Delano, California. He was a grape picker. And he, very dissimilarly from other Koreans, Japanese, and Chinese, he can read English. And so because he can read English, he could tell that the Filipino farm workers, are actually being mispaid. They're paying less than everyone else and actually not paid correctly. So he's like, hey, guys, let's strike. Let's strike. And he said, wait a minute, us Filipino guys, we are a large farm worker group, but hey, who's the second largest group? Well, we'd be more stronger. Aren't we all stronger when it's a collective, when it's 2 farm workers groups? So he talked to the Mexicans and he said, hey, let's all create together. And guess what? They started the United Farm Workers Movement. That is huge. And we all know the success story in the 1970s that a lot of the concessions they demanded were given to them. So again, please, this is like huge history of Asian American studies, in fact, global studies, global labor studies, right? It's so interconnecting. Now, number 7. Now, this is the 7th reason why Asian American studies matters. Sometimes there's really sad events that happen that bring the community together. And one sad event I really have to tell you about is the racist murder of Vincent Chin. And Vincent Chin was from Detroit, Michigan. It was in the 1980s. His father was a veteran, a U.S. Army veteran. And he, like all of us, was celebrating. And he actually is architect and he was getting married, actually. So he's getting married. And, during this time in 1980s, it's huge anti-Asian time. And if you've ever driven a Honda, if you don't know, the auto industry was very popular in Detroit, Michigan. And a lot of those auto plants actually went out of business. And so they laid off workers. And so, it was so anti-Asian sentiment. They literally had Hondas where they had beat up a Honda day where everyone would bring a bat and like break the Hondas, right? This is a craziness. So actually he went to a bar and celebrating his coming nuptials. And what happened was these people, 2 auto workers, I think one is Robin Nitz or something, I forget the name. And they actually yelled at him a racist slur. And he said, hey, you JAP, it's because of you, we don't have any jobs, right? And he's like, what? And of course he replied, said, I'm not Japanese. And, they argued. And actually those 2 men, it was the father and stepson, chased out Vincent Chin and actually beat him to death, right? Now, I think that if you beat someone to death, you would go to jail, right? Or have a fine or something, right? Usually, even if you beat up dogs, you go to jail. Well, you're not going to believe it. Just like we just had actually a racist murder of 8 people in Atlanta, Georgia recently, actually. And 6 of the eight people that are murdered in Atlanta, Georgia were actually Asian women. And when they interviewed the police officer, they said, hey, is it racist? They're like, oh no, he said the shooter was just having a bad day. Okay. Really? Hold on. So when these 2 murderers, and that's why they are murderers, murdered Vincent Chin, the judge said, well, they don't look like murderers. So you're not going to believe it. 0 days in jail and only a $2,000 fine that they never paid. Okay. In fact, they're like living great lives right now, wonderful lives in Las Vegas. Okay. So, this was a tragedy, but guess what? From that tragedy was Asian American kind of like solidarity. Asian Americans all over the place, including with African Americans, their coalition. They showed up for Asian Americans. Jesse Jackson actually very much helped Asian Americans. They came together and they did protest after protest after protest, and they did a civil rights claim against a federal hate crime against the 2 people. Of course, it's in 1980s, so it wasn't a great result, but it really formed enduring, I think, and still. Please remember that African Americans and Asian Americans have always come together and helped each other in many times of need. So again, huge. So if you're wondering how did this Asian American identity come out, I think part of it was this racist murder of Vincent Chin. Number 8, why Asian American Study Month and Asian American Studies matters, right? Well, in California, where I'm located, we have a lot of undocumented, right? Undocumented do not have papers for being American citizens. And so, and we have actually something called DACA. We call them dreamers, right? And DACA is a paper that says that they can actually be able to get a job or actually go to school. Now, it's interesting. It's very interesting because a lot of people don't know the history of DACA, right? Let me tell you the history. Right. Again, we're Asian American Studies. Asian American Month is so important for you to know. Okay. Take a look at this woman, Tereza Lee. Tereza Lee is very important in the history of, if you look at undocumented studies, right? She was born, her family was ethnically Korean. They fled from South Korea during the war. And what happened was they fled into Brazil. Okay. And they're undocumented. And then she was given birth in Brazil. And then they fled again from Brazil and they went to Chicago, where they took Tereza as a baby. And she was, pretty much not born in Chicago, but raised fully from a baby to adulthood, right? Into in Chicago. And she's a pianist. She's like a classical pianist. And so she's like really like gifted, like super gifted. And her teachers like loved her, and they really want to promote her and have her apply to all these other piano competitions, etc. Go to college. And she's like, I can't. I'm undocumented. I don't have papers. Yeah, I'm American. I seem American. I've been here since a baby, right? But I can't do it, right? And her teacher's like, no, we're going to get you citizenship. We're gonna get something special for you. So all of them, they write petitions, they write letters to Dick Durbin, a senator in Illinois, and they say, hey, we need you to help our student, our student who is basically American. She's been here her whole life. She's a baby. Come on, she knows no other place. She can't go back to Korea or Brazil, right? And so Dick Durbin meets her and says, hey, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna write a bill just for you so you get citizenship. So he proposes a bill. Unfortunately, it gets defeated. And yes, it does get defeated. But what happened was, after he did it, all these hundreds of undocumented in Chicago come for him and say, hey, can you redo this bill? Can you include everyone, etc.? And then he does it again. Of course, it's a lot of failure. Fast forward 2012, where Barack Obama signs the DACA Act. So again, is that transformative of the California? Yes. Is it transformative of the United States? Yes. And is it transformative for the world? Yes. Okay. So again, this is why Asian American Studies matters and why it is part of human history, American history, and transnational history. So important. Now, everyone go like this. Everyone do the heart. Everyone go like heart. Okay. And do higher if you're in love. If you're in love, do like this. Okay. All right. So this is a story of some person's love that changed your life, especially with kids right now during this time. They change your kids' lives. Okay. This is Eric Yuan. Eric Yuan, he fought for love so much. Okay. He's Chinese American and he's originally from China. And he would like literally stand in the train like a stiff, because in China it's like so overcrowded that you're just like, it's like, it's shoulder to shoulder. And he would stand for hours in the train to get to his girlfriend, Sherry. And he like so much so that he sometimes will sleep, right? It's just so uncomfortable and like so arduous. So he's like, I got to invent something that, I can talk to my Sherry and, so we can get together and I don't have to do this like train ride. Okay. So you know what he invented that changed your life and the world? Okay. His love changed the world. Zoom. He invented Zoom. Yeah. So you got to give it up for the Eric Yuan's love. Okay. And you got to give it up for Sherry, who changed the world because he did it for her. Okay. So again, this is the reason why Asian American Studies matters. You should know about Asian American Studies because it's so important. Now, number 10, why this matters. I want to loop back to my mom. My mom's shaking me. My mom's like shaking me. And she's saying, hey, you are not Black. You are Chinese, you're Asian, right? And I have to reply now as an adult. She's right and she's wrong. Number one, she's wrong because as an anthropologist, I can tell you that we're all evolved out of Africa, okay? Out of Africa theory. And actually all humans are African, okay? That's our human origin. But she's wrong on that, but she's right in that I really believe that she was trying to tell me that my story and my heritage mattered, right? And knowing about my own history and my own heritage makes me a better contributor to my society, my community, but also helps me contribute to other communities because I see the interconnections between Latino, African American, and Asian, okay? And again, your story matters, right? And so if your story matters, I would really push you to consider getting a Hmong minor or Native American Studies, major or minor, Africana major or minor, Chicano Latin American Studies major or minor. And of course, as I submitted the major, Asian American Studies, I'm going to push you to minor or major in Asian American Studies, right? Or we are your second double major as well. So again, your story matters. And we're all interconnected. And we've all helped each other. So those are the 10 reasons why Asian American Studies matters. And there's other ways that you can show support for Asian American Studies and Asian Americans community is actually read Asian American books, buy Asian American products and made by Asian Americans, right? And this is really important for you in terms of learning about other people. Right? It actually is so powerfully wonderful that I really encourage you to, read more about Asian Americans in history books, right? And if you can't do that right now, and there's lots of great TikToks and YouTube histories about Asian Americans, consider eating Asian American food. Sometimes the love language for Asians is definitely food. Maybe after watching this talk, get some pho, get some Korean barbecue, have some delicious naan with some chicken tikka masala, okay? Imbibe yourself with Asian food. Go to Chinatown, buy Asian products. And again, that's all ways to support and to ally with the Asian American community. Now, I'm going to end this talk with a chant. So hopefully I can hear you energetically, okay? I'm going to say Asian American Studies, and you can say matters. I'm going to say Asian American Studies, and you're going to say matters. I'm going to say Asian American Studies, and you're going to say matters. Okay, so if you can, I would love you to do that. And let's start. Asian American Studies matters. Asian American Studies matters. Asian American Studies matters. All right, and you matter. So thank you so much for coming to my presentation. Have a wonderful day.